The endocannabinoid system. Hi everybody, it's Dr. Sarah, and that's what's going to be our discussion today in my 5th video in my CBD oil series. I'm going to cover this wonderful regulator of many body processes and the many actions of the cannabinoids, CBD, and cannabis essential oil. So that's all coming up. Before I get started though, for those of you who may have missed the first 4 videos, there's going to be a link to the accompanying videos as well as the articles with all the references and resources. Now, just a little recap. What we've already overviewed is a brief introduction on CBD oil and some of its precautions, the legal restrictions of the cannabis plant in which CBD oil is extracted, a review of this magical elixir's current medical indications, and I re-clarified the state and federal laws related to CBD after the recent passage of the Farm Bill in 2018. Many people falsely assumed that with the legalization of hemp and declassifying it as a Schedule I drug to a Schedule V would make CBD oil extract legal in all states, and that's not necessarily so. There's a lot of caveats to how you could get CBD, so make sure you check that out if you're considering the use of CBD and wondering if you can in your state. And I also started an introduction to the difference between CBD oil extract and cannabis essential oil. So that's what we've covered so far. And now I want to go through the mechanisms of actions of the many compounds found in cannabis, including CBD. And I'm going to start with the wonderful endocannabinoid system. And even before that, though, I'm actually going to take a brief pause just to clarify CBD oil versus cannabis essential oil. So the cannabis essential oil contains compounds, mostly terpenes in it. CBD is a component of cannabis that is extracted mostly through fatty oil extraction. It's not steam distilled as an essential oil. Remember, the essential oil is taken from the plant cannabis. You can't take an essential oil from a compound. So that is a major difference. So when we talk about the entourage effect, you may see that in the literature. That's a term that references the idea that the whole spectrum extract of hemp or cannabis will be more effective than any of its isolated compounds. This includes CBD or the essential oils. They all have their different mechanisms of actions, and they can all act together for the sum being greater than its isolated parts as far as a beneficial effect and balancing effect. This is very similar to the concept of synergism in essential oils. And in a future post, I'm going to discuss more about this entourage effect and the use of essential oils in a full spectrum product. So stay tuned for that, but it's important to understand that these are all different compounds and constituents that can interact with the endocannabinoid system. So what is the endocannabinoid system? Say that 3 times fast. It's important to understand because many of the cannabinoids actually interact with this system. So knowledge of it will help you understand CBD and some of other cannabis's compound actions. This system, endocannabinoid system, which is abbreviated the ECS, it's an underappreciated regulator of a variety of biochemical processes. The body makes its own, which is referred to as endogenous endocannabinoids, and it affects many central and peripheral receptors. And a dysregulation in this system is linked to various disorders. And it wasn't even well studied until the discovery of different drugs and compounds were found to interact the cannabinoid receptors, which regulates the ECS. Tells it to do different things in different processes. The most famous compound is THC, which is found in cannabis, or delta-9 dihydrocannabidiol. This is the psychoactive component that is usually attributed to marijuana. Now, several other compounds and medications can affect cannabinoid receptors in a variety of ways. I discussed that a compound in copaiba, when I was reviewing that essential oil, contained a compound called beta-caryophyllene, which has evidence of binding to the non-psychoactive cannabinoid receptor in the body, and that has been actually been shown to have a number of different positive effects throughout different body systems. There was a 2009 abstract that I linked to in the article that went through how a summary of the ECS and how its endogenous endocannabinoids are released, transported, and degraded within the body. And it uses a kind of a unique form of retrograde signaling in the neurons, and this is different than how most neurons communicate with each other. These are the nervous system cells that create a signal to tell the body what to do. It's one way that tells the body what to do at the in the nervous system. And what ends up happening with this particular form of signaling is it's a widespread response impacting not just that nerve, but a whole central nervous system response. And for those who want the biochemistry, they can look at the abstract that I put in the excerpt in one of my articles. But basically, it's implicated, the result of these receptors in the ECS being stimulated is implicated in hormonal regulation, food intake, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, immune, behavioral regulation, anti-proliferative, and many other functions. Now, there was a 2017 article called Medical Cannabis History, Pharmacology, and Implications for Acute Settings, and they went into the two main cannabinoid receptors and the endogenous and synthetic compounds that act at these receptors as modulators. And there's basically another excerpt that I put, again, from that article that you can get into the nitty-gritty details if you'd like. But it goes through the whole homeostatic mechanisms of the ECS, and that it has a role in the pathology of disorders and a protective function in certain medical conditions. It goes over the two main types of the endocannabinoids and how they're related to the mind. There's a mind, nervous, immune connection, or mind-body medicine of the endocannabinoid system. And cannabinoid receptor type 1, or CB1, is one of the most abundant, and it's expressed in the central nervous system and in different parts of the brain. Hence, when you hit that receptor, that's what THC causes some of those psychoactive effects and some of the negative side effects. CB1 is also expressed on non-neuronal cells, such as connective tissue, muscles, the gonads, the fat tissue. CB2 is principally associated with immune function. There's also been some evidence it can be also expressed in the central nervous system. It's a little bit more controversial as more research is being found about the CB2 receptor, which might be balancing out the effect of just straight THC, which hits the CB1 receptor and the CB2 receptors, but maybe other things can modulate the CB2 receptor and other areas of the body that can also regulate their effects. So that brings us to the entourage effect of the endogenous endocannabinoids, the ones we make in our own body, and these phytocannabinoids, and the cannabinoids, whether they be synthetic or not. So I did do, again, another excerpt from the literature, and for those who want the plain English summary, basically the endogenous cannabinoids can work with these phytocannabinoids, whether it be THC or CBD, to influence receptors throughout the body to create a balancing effect and to either one of the ways that CBD might work is by allowing your body not to break down some of the endogenous and anandamide cannabinoid, and that makes it last longer in the body and have some beneficial effects. And this is the whole entourage effect that I discussed. So far we've learned that the body produces its own cannabinoids and that they affect our nervous system and other processes in a unique way, and that other compounds, whether they be natural or synthetic, can act on these same receptors or modulate them to enhance and balance out their effects. So let's get into, now that we understand these cannabinoid receptors and THC and the ECS, let's look at the difference between CBD and THC. So basically, that THC hits the cannabinoid receptor CB1 and CB2, which I said. CBD does not hit the actual cannabinoid receptors. However, it impacts other receptors, and like I said, it might also prevent the breakdown of some of our endogenous endocannabinoids by working on a specific enzyme. Both of them have been found in the literature to have anti-inflammatory effects and relieve pain. CB1 receptors regulate brain functioning, plasticity, and pain. CB2, again, is controversial, but it may impact brain inflammation and has been found also on the mitochondria and intracellularly. Say that 5 times fast. There's my tongue twister. So there's, again, another excerpt for those who want the nitty-gritty science, and it's important to remember that for a long time, that the ECS wasn't very well studied until we found things that could actually affect it. So more research is being revealed what these different actions are. So stay tuned for more up-to-the-date literature as more evidence comes out. There's going to be a mass amount of research with the legalization of hemp and being able to explore this entourage that exists in this particular form of cannabis species. So hemp is a form of the cannabis species. Just like essential oils have different lavenders, there's different species of lavenders, different chemotypes. All of these things are true of the plant cannabis, which also has its own essential oils. So this can get really into the weeds, right? So, in a long, monstrous review, okay, that if you really want to understand the biochemistry of the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, and how it's impacting basically what we understand about regulating the human body and different targets now that they're going after in pharmacotherapy as well as natural products, this would be one of the references I would recommend. The article also gives a view that summarizes the outcomes using cannabinoid-related medications by diseases. And if you click on that link, you're going to see there's clinical trials with cannabinoid-related medications, including cancer, AIDS, what the results were, what the side effects were, what cannabinoid they used, whether it be THC, a prescription form of a compound in cannabis, Alzheimer's, Tourette syndrome, schizophrenia. They have reports on metabolic issues. So that's a quick snippet at some of the, mostly THC and some of the medications. Now, in the upcoming articles, I'm going to go over more about this entourage full spectrum effect, the essential oil, and then the clinical trials with CBD alone. But I think, as you can see, it's pretty complex. So having something that doesn't just hit 1 or 2 receptors, but also has a broader effect and can possibly hit other receptors that can balance it out, might be a good idea. And this is the argument for those making full spectrum and entourage compounds with their CBD oil. So stay tuned for that. I have no affiliation with anything related to CBD as this article is being written, so I'm just trying to present you guys with the literature. I don't know if one of the companies I will be affiliated with will come up with a CBD oil product, but this is it for right now. So this is the research, okay? So I hope that you find this helpful, and I will talk to you all very soon. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening.